What's going on, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back to the Bayou Blitz. Brendan Boylan here. Bob Rose joining us from vacation. What a busy vacation Bob's had. Did Jordy Holtberg yesterday. He's with us today. And to the disappointment of all our viewers, no shirtless Bob at the beach for today's episode. But nonetheless, lots to talk about New Orleans Saints. Oh, God, no. Now I got to change the rating. I went from PG. We got to go adjust it to PG-13, Bob. But nonetheless, lots to talk about with the New Orleans Saints. First week of training camp in the books. We have a special guest today. He's waiting in the wings, Mr. John Hendrix. He's been at camp all week long. If you don't already follow him on Twitter, please do, because he's given the best updates. He's given in-depth coverage throughout the week, day by day. I don't know if there's anybody that does it any better. So without further ado, our friend and colleague, Mr. John Hendrix. We appreciate all you do, buddy. You're out there struggling in the heat. Bob's at the beach. I'm inside with the AC. But nonetheless, how's everything going for you, and how has camp been thus far down in Metairie?
Yeah, thanks, guys, for having me. Appreciate all the accolades and the support. It really means a lot. First and foremost, just a normal day of camp. Like, I dozed off on the couch, not in the last 30, 40 minutes. That's just kind of how it was. And so, I mean, that's just kind of rolls. Camp's been good. We were inside today. We were inside yesterday because of the weather. So that's been nice. Heat's brutal. If you've been down in South Louisiana for like 5 minutes during the summer in August, and you understand what it's like. So, but man, it's been a fun time. Hard to think how many years I've put covering this team so far. And this year has just offered us so much. And I think just kind of the elements of not having Sean Payton here, and then the year before you don't have Drew Brees. And so it's kind of like a really exciting time to cover this team, because you just kind of don't know. And I think some of that element, you're like really optimistic in some aspects, but you want to see, what this team's future holds. And some people are thinking, oh man, this team's going to go back into the basement. Some are like, no, it's Super Bowl and stuff. So it's been good, man. It's camp gives us a very unique look at things. There's always so much to pay attention to, yet, it's sometimes when you do these recaps and when you look at it, you feel like you didn't get enough sometimes, but it's been good. I have to say that.
Bayou Blitz family, welcome each and every single one of you for joining us on another Wednesday evening. I am Bob Rose. I'm joined by my co-host Brendan Boylan, and of course our on the frontline Saints reporter John Hendrix. John, I know you've been covering this team for a long time. Have you, and I realize it's still the tip of the iceberg as far as the beginning of camp, but have you ever seen a more confrontational or physical start to Saints camp in your career so far?
No, I haven't. Look, obviously I think Trevor Penning's a big focal point here, right? But I don't think that's where it starts. I think this starts with the Saints defense. These guys have been really physical. The corners have been physical. The safeties have been physical. Linebackers, you got guys like DeMario hitting tight ends that are coming across. I mean, this has been a very physical camp to start, in the trenches, and the defense is talking, their smack and stuff. And, I think Cam Jordan said it best kind of the other day, that I think this team is starting to be known more as a defensive first type team, which is kind of crazy to think where they were before and all this. And I would kind of tend to agree. And so, physicality is one thing because it's football, right? And you look at Trevor Penning, again, hot topic today, gets into it. Malcolm Roach, they both get thrown out of practice. I mean, this is 3 straight days. And, you talk to JT Gray, who everybody's like, oh man, it's a defensive back, through the whistle. Gray said today, that's just football. He's just playing football. And Peyton Turner taking exception. I think Penning kind of won that rep, and Turner took exception to it. And you can't hit people with your with the helmet on. That's never a smart thing. But I think that some of this too is defense has got such a real physicality to them right now. And look, I feel like in some aspects, Trevor Penning's probably the one guy that on offense that's maybe taking up for the offense. But, I don't blame him for how things have gone in some aspects. I said it earlier, just with some of the stuff I recorded is, it's a problem if somebody gets hurt. That's when I really take issue. But I think I'd rather see an offensive lineman like him play more aggressive than be tame, and you have to get the animal out of him. And so Penning is probably not going to start left tackle week 1. I mean, I'd say in a confidence level, I think James Hurst is probably 95%. And he's going to start in week 1. Penny's got a lot to work on. That's cool that you got fireworks going on in the background, Bob. But again, he's going to come along and such. But, to answer again your question, it's been a very physical training camp so far. It's been not lacking in terms of just the physicality. And it's probably been, again, probably the most aggressive that I've seen at Saints camp in all the years I've covered this team.
Well, it's interesting what you said with Cameron Jordan saying this is becoming more of a defensive team, because you look at all the news throughout the week. Obviously, Smoke Monday made some headlines, suffering a really bad injury. Tyrann Mathieu returned to camp today. And then you have a guy who's really been the standout of camp so far in Paulson Adebo. Yeah. What have you seen from the defensive side that has been just so different this year? And what have you seen out of Dennis Allen that has countered from what Sean Payton brought to the table when he was with the team?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the defense is confident. I mean, I know this is a group that feels really good about where they're at. And again, for a team that lost Malcolm Jenkins due to retirement, and you lose Marcus Williams, you backfill him with Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu. Tyrann Mathieu's a guy just like Jarvis Landry that's really rejuvenated and coming back to New Orleans and such. And so, look, I think that they're just playing with a lot of confidence right now. And again, I think that's the best trait that you can have. I think the coaching is another huge reason. The coaching that, look, it won't surprise me in the next few seasons that some of these coaches don't get larger roles. I mean, Michael Hodges at linebacker is probably one of the most intense guys that's out there. He is absolutely so underrated on the radar right now. And, you look at the co-defensive coordinator type thing, Chris Richard, I think the best way I could explain him is just talking to the players is he's able to slow the game down for a lot of these corners. And he's very, very good teacher. In the moment, after one-on-ones, after all these types of different things that happen, he's teaching, he's explaining. And it's not like these corners have a thing where like, what are you talking about? They're taking his instruction. And, you guys know you had guys like Brandon Brown around this room and stuff that probably wouldn't have taken to good coaching, right? And you got Ryan Nielsen on the D-line, who's as smart as it comes. I mean, this is a very underrated coaching staff. And I just feel like defensively, they're doing a lot of things that are full of confidence. They know their assignments. They know where the breakdowns are. And, of course, you talk about, is there carryover from last year or something? There's probably not, but I think the way they're playing and the way things are going, the sky's the limit for this defense. I think they have, easily top 10, potential. I think they have a top 5 ceiling, and I think they're willing to prove it. As far as Dennis Allen, look, it's interesting just because, Sean Payton and Dennis Allen are totally different, but kind of alike in some ways. Today practice got really chippy. It got spirited. Everybody came together, fights never good. DA kicked people out of practice, obviously. And then afterwards, I can't repeat and really say what was said in the huddle with the team after they shut down practice, but I guarantee you he landed the message. And so I think, for him, he's still trying to get some of his feet wet in the sense of talking to the media, because there's certain things I think that he'll talk about that Sean Payton wouldn't talk about, but I think Sean was a good educator. So like if you ask him a question about X's and O's, Sean gives you a really good answer on a lot of those things. And, DA is, I think, a guy that, if you ask about progress on a particular rookie or a player, I mean, he's been quick to say, well, it's just early. It's just early. We're still evaluating. And I think that's good, because some of these players, you don't want to give them, a blank check or a whole full pass when you've only seen them in just a few practice situations. You want to see it translate in preseason. You want to see them progress. You want to see them, continue to rise. So I think that's been some of the biggest changes, and DA's just handles things in a completely different way. No nonsense type guy. He's about getting the work done, doing it right the first time, and then let's get home and come back and do it again.
Folks, I've seen a few of you chime in the comment section, and yeah, you're right. The band is all here. We'd like to welcome our boss, the straw that stirs the drink, Mr. Kyle T. Mosley. How are you tonight, Mr. Mosley?
Right when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. How y'all doing, man? It's good to see everybody, the whole crew, and thank you, listeners, to be able to follow Brendan and Bob for the Bayou Blitz. And John has been doing a phenomenal job covering the Saints practices. Thank you so much for what you've done. And we've been working as a team since Bob on vacation. But
man, he got fireworks going off in the background. You see that?
Yeah, I mean, right. I'm popular. They wait for me to come to Ocean City to do this.
Yeah, I have to say this though. Let's just get this off my chest. Guys, he didn't ask for a vacation. He just said he was going on vacation. You know, I was like, what the hell's going on here? What type of operation we're running? No, but seriously, those guys have done a great job. And, you know, I'm looking forward. This is going to be an exciting season. And you can already feel it. It's like you can sense something in the practices, the way these guys are handling the players, the coaches. And look, I don't know if John can sense this. I know DA is different than Sean Payton, but he answers questions. That's one thing I like. He does answer the question.
Yeah, the first times he kind of gave us some info on injuries or anything like that, or like
he actually talked like injuries.
Talk about it. Yeah. I mean, there's some stuff, you know, and I get it. So it's different. Like, and I'll just say this, and it's nothing against Sean, you know, because he did his thing and he ran things the way he is. That's probably why if he goes to a team, it's Chargers is probably the best bet. And there's no way he's going to be able to do that in Dallas or, you know, another situation. But anyways, that's a totally different thing for another day. But I would say that, you know, DA has given us a lot more access on the field. You know, we're able to go past, you know, the 40-yard line and see more like up close in the trenches with the offensive linemen, see the defensive linemen. We're able to move around more. Something I picked up on this season is that families of the players have been in the stands. So days where it's closed off to the public, you got families here. Andy Dalton had his crew here with some of his friends. I've seen that a lot more. And so I think DA is a guy that believes a lot in the family aspect. And so that's a welcome thing. I don't, not that Sean didn't, you know, I think that there was times that happened, but it's just something good to see that, you know, regime changes hands, that DA values stuff like that. So I'm with you, Kyle. I believe there's a lot of good changes that DA has brought to this table.
Yeah. Kyle, John's been talking to us about the defense, and they've been setting the tone in a lot of these practices so far. I'd like to ask you a question about the offense, specifically quarterback Jameis Winston. And now you spent a lot of time in the offseason, interviewing people about Winston, and things like that. And you've done some wonderful pieces. What kind of transformation have you seen out of Jameis Winston, and what you've seen? Do you believe that he is the guy to take this Saints offense out of the doldrums that we saw in 2021?
Did you see the deep ball? Did you see the deep ball?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so, Bob, you know, ever since we were doing Crescent City Connection on Saints News Radio, I would always talk about the fact that Drew Brees' arm was not getting down the field as well as he could have done because of age and whatever. But Jameis Winston has an accurate deep ball. And John and Brendan, you guys may remember how Randall Cunningham transformed that Minnesota Vikings offense with Chris Carter, Randy Moss with the deep ball, right? I think right now he doesn't have somebody looking over his shoulder. It's not a question that when he went into this offseason that he was the man. It wasn't a battle with Taysom Hill, right? It wasn't the hemming and hawing that you get from the press. There was nobody else that you could really say was the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints other than Jameis Winston. Now, they pursued Deshaun Watson. They dodged a huge bullet by not getting him, right? But that's a mild understatement, right? But the bottom line is Jameis Winston looks more confident. And John, you're there, right? You can sense it in his demeanor, how he's carrying himself, how he's working with the receivers during the offseason, as well as look, think about this. He invited his backups to Miami to be there with him, working out with the skill position guys. How many guys who and I've thought about all these great quarterbacks. You'll see Drew Brees spent time with. He was with who's the guy?
I remember Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah. Emmanuel Sanders, and then you had Joe Montana and Steve Young, and those guys would go and participate with whomever from the 49ers guys. You don't ever recall that a backup was there with those guys. It was just the main guy and everybody else. So I think that shows a lot of trust, and it showed a lot of confidence in his abilities. Now, what I was very, very pleased with, I saw a clip from today, John, and you could possibly speak on this, how he was rolling out, Bob. He rolled out to the right on that bad wheel, and he had a great pass to Chris Olave. So when you look at how Jameis Winston is approaching the game, how the coaches as well as the players have been gravitating to his leadership, I think that is the telltale sign that he's the right guy for this job.
Yeah, and I'll add to this that Jameis, another thing to think, he footed the bill for all his players to be there. So that speaks even more about him. And, talking to guys like Traquan, they had a rigorous schedule. So this was not like a kumbaya hangout. He said the first day they were there, they woke up and they ate breakfast at 8 o'clock. They were starting to work. They didn't stop till 8 o'clock at night. So they put in a full 12-hour day between film, on the field, all sorts of things. And so, look, I've seen his confidence only build. I don't think the knee's an issue right now. I think he looks great in it. I think he's moving around well. The brace is something he said he's going to command this season, and it's not going to hinder him or limit him in any way. But again, it's just another layer of protection. So, I remember back at minicamp, people were making such a big deal about his limp and stuff. And it's like, the guy's coming off a major surgery. So it just shows you how sometimes this stuff happens. But
look,
Winston, they're going to live, breathe, and die by what Jameis Winston does this season.
Look, 50 Cent got shot 9 times and he walks with a limp, so he's a confident guy. He can do the job. What do we want, man? Look how many years Dan Marino wore that huge brace on his knee and did what he did. Think about it. So I'm not saying Jameis Winston is there. All I'm saying is this. I like everything about the setup of how they're approaching this season with Winston, with Andy Dalton, who's a very capable backup.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't have a very capable backup last season. I know a lot of people love Taysom Hill, but he proved that to handle that job in more adverse situations was not for him. All right. And I know look at his record. Yeah, but it wasn't for him. And Trevor Siemian, God bless him, it wasn't for him as well. So I think right now the Saints are in good positions. And Pat Kerwin said this on Moving the Chains a few weeks ago about the New Orleans Saints. He said, look at the depth of the team as a whole. That's what you have to be confident in if you're Dennis Allen and the coaching staff, is because they present challenges for teams because of the depth that they have, especially on the defensive side.
Well, sticking to that point in depth, one thing that Bob and I have talked about a lot the last 2 weeks is if there's one position where the Saints may be lacking depth and lacking experience, it's tight end. There's been a lot of attention towards the receivers this offseason, rightfully so. John, there's been a couple reports that Adam Troutman has impressed in a few days worth of camp. What are you seeing out of that tight end position to maybe cheer the mood up of some of these Saints fans that are concerned about that spot?
Yeah, I was more concerned about tight end than I was probably running back, or the third running back spot. But tight end is just an area because, guys like Nick Vannett, I think they're on the chopping block. I think he's on the roster bubble. And so I think it's a big deal for him to come in and do what he needs to. I know they have a lot of belief in Taysom, and he looked good before he got a shot to his ribs, and now he's out for a little bit, according to Dennis Allen. But look, Troutman, I think he looked pretty decent in camp last year. It wasn't like flashing, though. It's not flashing like it is this season. And I think he's been there. He's been able to kind of just escape underneath. He's been able to get open, and those are things you obviously want to see. I think between Hill and Troutman and Juwan Johnson, that they have the opportunity and the potential there. And, Troutman said it the other day. He's like, look, we know that this group is capable of doing a lot of things. And the fact is that we're willing to prove it. They believe in themselves in the tight end room. I know there's a lot to ask. And look, I think maybe some of the pressure may be off of them too, because of the upgraded wide receiver talent that they have. That allows you to use Alvin Kamara a lot better and a lot more efficient, and giving them 20 to 25 carries a game. I think it allows you, to do a lot different things. So look, Troutman's going to be a big, important part of this team. And I think it's him and Taysom Hill are probably the top guys. Jawan Johnson had a nice start to last season, huge red zone threat, but he kind of fizzled out towards the middle. And, towards the end of the year, he was getting garbage time type of catches. And so he bulked up. I think he's in for a larger role this season too. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how it all comes together, because if it's 3rd and 10, you need a completion. It's not Kenny Stills that you want to hit. It's one of those guys probably. And I think they feel better about what they have in this room with just another year under their belt. So I feel like there's more reason to be optimistic this season. Now, are they George Kittle or, Travis Kelce? No. I think you put them all together, you probably still don't have anything that closely resembles all those guys. But, they're going to have a lot on them to kind of prove. And, tight ends here that play for the Saints are always going to be measured up to Jimmy Graham. And
sure,
whether you're in that conversation or not, even close, they have the opportunity. But, we'll see if they take it this season.
And guys, I'd like to hear from both you, John, and you, Kyle. Listen, everybody's talking about the first rounders, and rightfully so. Chris Olave has had a really strong start to camp. Trevor Penning is making all kinds of headlines. What about the other rookies? Alontae Taylor, Demarco Jackson, Jordan Jackson. What are you two seeing from those guys early on in camp? How quickly are they developing?
I'd say. Go ahead. You want to take it first? No, it's fine.
I'll let you, because you're there, man. You see it more than I do. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say Alontae Taylor's coming along really well. And for somebody who has just come in here and just been a sponge, I think Alontae Taylor is a guy that's only getting better every day. Still a rookie, still having to learn some things, getting beaten some in one-on-ones, getting beat sometimes in team drills. But he's doing a good job of holding his own, whether it's against one-on-ones, going against guys like Olave. Him and Chris Olave going against each other has probably been one of the most entertaining parts of training camp. And I know, before then it was always Marshawn Lattimore and Michael Thomas, but now it's Taylor versus Olave. So I think that's been a really fun one to see. I think he's going to flourish pretty nicely. And obviously way Paulson and Debo is playing, there's no question who's going to be number 2 corner right now. And Bradley Roby's still playing well. And look, I know stuff is happening right now with CJ Gardner-Johnson and wanting a new contract. Taylor is a guy that might be that slot option if they can't get something done with CJ Gardner-Johnson. I know people, it hurts to hear that, but I think they had a clear vision when they drafted him. I think it's a potential possibility if they can't get something done with him. As far as Demarco Jackson, he made 2 really good plays to start training camp on the first 2 days. Seeing a little bit of him and there. Andrew Dow had some really good things to say about him and where he's kind of at. He's learning that Mike position and kind of more of a special team standout right now. And Jordan Jackson is always facing an uphill battle as it is, just because of where the things are on the defensive line, but had a good run stop today, and obviously is starting to get some on the radar, if you will. And so I think as you move into preseason, you'll see a lot more of these guys, and I think that's probably where you measure it, because in practice, you only see a few things, but you'll see a lot more going into preseason action.
Yeah, well, I concur. Everything that John said, but Taylor is the guy that's interesting, John. Man, think about what's happening here. I think Chauncey is forcing the team's hand right now. He's really saying, okay, I know you got the young cat. Is he my replacement? Is that why you have him here? What you going to do? Am I a valuable part of this team? Let's prove it. Let's put it down on paper and give me the paper. So I think that is what's happening. Jordan Jack, he has a tough road to try to make this team. We knew that going into the season. He may be a good practice squad type of young man. Demarco Jackson, and John, I'm glad you said something. I haven't seen much on the clips that I have seen. I haven't seen much of him, So, but Alontae Taylor is the guy that I think we need to start thinking about. He may be one of those long-term guys for the New Orleans Saints, and he's got the speed, the size, the tenaciousness on defense, and he's been right there with Paulson Adebo and those guys making plays. So that's what you want. You want playmakers, but it always has to translate into the game itself. And let's see how the production will be for the game action that these guys will start to see in the preseason.
Well, guys, we ran a poll this week on Twitter on the Bayou Blitz pod. And if you guys don't follow, go ahead and follow, because we're going to have weekly polls about what you guys want to hear from us. And today's poll was, what did they want to hear about in the first week of training camp? And it was runaway 50-something% said they wanted to hear about the surprise standouts of camp. So while I still have John here, as he's going to be getting ready to go here at the half-hour mark, John, Kyle, who's been a surprise standout so far in Saints camp? We talked about Alontae Taylor. We've talked about some of the guys on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, the return of Michael Thomas. You could say that's a standout, perhaps. We talked about Troutman. But who's one guy that really surprised you that has performed really well in camp over the last 7 days?
Well, I'll just start by saying you casually threw Michael Thomas. I'd say Michael Thomas is back. Michael Thomas can't guard Mike. He looks outstanding. I thought that, him coming back, maybe they try to ease and he'd be a little bit. I think Michael Thomas is back to himself. I don't know if there's anything there that's actually bothering him. But I'd say first and foremost, that's been really surprising to me that of how well he's been playing. But I think some other guys that I'd say have had an opportunity to really, in fairness to your question, to just kind of stand out a little bit on their own. Carl Granderson, I think, is one of them. He's been kind of the opposite of Cam Jordan. I think he's done a good job there as far as where he's developing as a pass rusher and becoming a more complete player against the run. And so not having Marcus Davenport and Peyton Turner in the lineup has only benefited him. I think veteran Eric Wilson at linebacker has been another one that we kind of look at that, with Pete Warner being out a little bit, he took more of a spotlight, and he's a guy as a vet who, wasn't so long ago, had triple digits in tackles. And so he's somebody to keep an eye on. I think, and you look at offensive players, Devin Azigbo is one running back. I think he's looking really good. Abram Smith, the undrafted rookie, I think he's also putting together some good things. Dejon Dixon, undrafted guy, I think he has an exponentially better chance now to make the practice squad with the stuff that's happened with Kawan Baker. And so those are things. I tell you, one of the other ones really would be Kirk Merritt. Kirk Merritt is a guy I don't think he makes the final roster just because, unless something happens, because you guys got to remember, there's some teams right now that need some wide receivers. You could trade Traquan. You could trade Marquez Callaway. I don't know if you would, but, a guy like Kirk Merritt, who gives some upside on special teams, he just looks quick. He gets off the ball well. He just is you can tell he's giving it 150 on every rep that he takes. I think he's somebody that stood out a good bit. I paid attention to the offensive line a good bit too. Landon Young's another one. I think he's taken a huge leap this season, and it shows. He's working with the first team, but I just, in talking with him and talking with James Hurst and talking with, just all these offensive linemen, Landon Young, I'm just impressed with how big his football IQ is, and just knowing what the difference between being in pads and not being in pads, what the things are on timing and all that. So I gave a few, but
John, before you go, how valuable has it been to have Jari Evans there?
Yeah, look, I asked Andres Pete about this today, and obviously he played a little bit with Jari, or Ja, as they called him, and such. And so I think it's a very welcomed addition having him and Ty Warren on the staff now. And so, obviously Jari is one of the best ones to do it from an interior perspective. And, look, to give you a little bit of rundown, because obviously Doug Marrone is first thing I'd say, it kind of back up a little bit. Doug Marrone coming in here is probably one of the best things to happen to the Saints offensive line. So guys like Cesar Ruiz and not just Pete, guys that that need to kind of elevate a little bit, it's good for them. And so when you see it split up, sometimes it's half of the offensive linemen working with Marrone, half of them working with Streif. The tackles specifically are working with Streif. The interior line is working with Marrone. I think Jari's bringing a hands-on approach with both sides. I saw him today kind of getting in with the guards and just kind of giving them some coaching. And I think one of the things that they've really talked about is the first punches and your hand placement. Jari was telling us the story about the first time he went up against Aaron Donald and absolutely just like dominated him, and just kind of talking about that hand placement, just some things that really helped him along the lines in the league. And so, I think it's a great addition, and I love the fact that they're having these coaching interns. And look, it's not just him. Like, you guys got to remember guys like Sterling Moore on this team that played, a defensive back that are helping in the secondary. They have a lot of those players, the former players that are here and doing a lot of good work. And so Jari, man, I think he's got a bright future. And I'll just say this too. I'm not going to be surprised the day that we say Zach Streif is an offensive line coach, and I think he won't stop there. I think he can even move up more. But Streif is so smart and intelligent and just so instructive when he gives the feedback. And again, I think you always say to yourself, well, duh, that's what a coach is supposed to do. But I seen coaches that, there's a right way to coach and a wrong way to coach. He said that, or it was Trevor Penning saying the other day, when he's watching film, Zach Streif's like right on the right side of him, just kind of giving him instruction and stuff. And so I think he just offers a very unique perspective. These former players, and Marrone was one too, that they just are invaluable. And a guy like Jari in this building, around this program, knowing what to expect from the Saints and all that, is only going to breed good things for this offensive line.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, I'll tell you who's invaluable to the team, John Hendricks down there. And he's invaluable to his family as well. So we're going to let him go hang out with the wife and the kids a little bit. But before we let you go, John, where can everybody follow you if they don't already?
Yeah, you see it right here on the screen on Twitter at John J. Hendricks, and then obviously Saints.media or SI's website coverage. That's the best way to get at us, doing some video work for Boot Crew and, sending some people on those videos, making sure they check us out. But look, you guys, I appreciate all the support that you offer and reading our stuff. We're working hard tirelessly to make sure we deliver you premium Saints content. And so we thank you just so much for the support and trusting us to be the guys to give you a different perspective that we feel like you just can't get and just anywhere.
Well, that is Mr. John Hendricks, lead reporter for the Saints News Network. Thanks, John. Enjoy some time at home before you're right back at it for another day down in Metairie.
All right, guys. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Good job.
All right, guys. So it's been an interesting week. We've covered a lot of different things. There's still so much to talk about in terms of Saints camp, and we've touched a little bit on Trevor Penning, but I'd like to open Pandora's box a little bit more. Obviously, the viral Twitter videos of fights, for lack of a better term, the last few days, and there is a point where a kid who's in his first week of being in training camp will learn how to be a pro, for lack of a better phrase. Mm-hmm. However, how much do you like to see that out of a young guy? A guy that, Bob, you and I, at least from memory, doing the show live during the draft, we both had him in our mocks to the New Orleans Saints. So living up to that potential so far, how much do you like to see that aggressiveness, and where is that line to tone it down?
I'm going to borrow an expression from our boss and good friend. Be tenacious. And that is what Trevor Penning is first and foremost. I watched the man play. When I watched his film leading up to the draft, the first player that came to mind was a favorite of all three of ours on and off the field, Kyle Turley. And I would even go as far as saying that Trevor Penning might be a better athlete than Kyle Turley. And Kyle is a fantastic athlete. So I don't mind the aggressiveness whatsoever. Now, I do think that it will reach a point, if it hasn't already, that the veteran leadership, the Demario Davises, the Cam Jordans, are going to maybe kind of take Penning aside and say, okay, we love what you're doing, kid, but at least against your own teammates, take that foot off the accelerator pedal just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I love the aggressiveness, and it's infectious throughout the whole team. It makes everybody fight hard, not just for their jobs, but from whistle to whistle, and that's what you have to do, to exceed at the professional sports level. And I think Trevor Penning will make everybody else around him because of his attitude, and he's going to learn, when to take it easy. You don't want, like John pointed out early in the show, you don't want any of your players going down by friendly fire. And that's maybe the point that this is edging up to. But I have no doubt that the veterans are going to sit him down and he's going to ease off that gas pedal just a tad.
Kyle, any thoughts?
Oh, well, I don't have a problem with it. You're fighting for a job.
Right.
You have to make a name for yourself. You can't be a pushover. You are the offensive tackle, left offensive tackle for the New Orleans Saints. You have just come in to be able to take over where Teron Armstead left off, right? So therefore, yeah, you have to be tenacious. You have to not show that any sign of weakness, a defensive player is going to take up on that. In the first two days of the practice, if you watch Penning, he was getting beat. Charles, who was it? Granderson beat him. Then you had Peyton Turner was giving him the business, right? Then that's when he started saying, okay, I got to do something. I'm getting frustrated with all of this, and that's what you have seen. Has he learned already? Yeah, being kicked out of a practice. I don't know about you guys. I've been kicked out of a practice before, and it's not a fun thing. It's an embarrassing thing. But you start to learn how to handle these situations a lot better. And I think it's right. You don't want friendly fire to be a cause of one of your players because he's much bigger than everybody else. He even took on JT Gray. And you saw Gray push him, and he ran back a little bit like, hey, man. So I like what I see, but you don't want your team to lose 15 yards because of a PI. That's the thing that I think Dennis Allen, as well as Marone, as well as Pete Carmichael's going to try to get over to him. Kyle Turley, and I put this in the article. Remember, it was that infamous helmet toss when he was trying to protect Aaron Brooks. And the guy was giving Brooks the business, twisting his head in the pile. So, yeah, he was trying to protect his quarterback. And Kyle Turley has come off as a villain, but he wasn't. He was really there to try to help his guy. And I think you're going to have that in Trevor Penning. Is he learning? Yes. Does he need to get better? Of course. Everybody does. But I think he's also making some of these veterans think second about messing with him as well, man. Think about that, Bob. Hey, man, this guy might go off on me, Right. And guess who else is seeing this footage? The rest of the National Football League, the NFC South guys, the coaches. These guys are now saying, Penning, we got to watch out for. He's not just going to be a pushover. I love it, like it, and it is what it is.
Yep. Hey, listen, Kyle, you touched on C.J. Gardner-Johnson kind of forcing the Saints' hand in upcoming contract talks. But taking that off of the table, this front office, and obviously we're going to have plenty of time to talk about it too, but this front office has some difficult decisions to make before the end of next year. And upcoming free agents like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Eric McCoy, David Onyemata, Marcus Davenport, Deontay Hardy, Shai Tuttle, just to name the top enders. If you were Mickey Loomis, Cam Jordan. If you were Mickey Loomis and Dennis Allen, who would you next prioritize if you were the Saints? And give me two names, because oftentimes we've seen the Saints lock up players the year before the training camp before they become unrestricted free agents. Do you see that happening with any of these guys on that list?
Give me the names again.
Gardner Johnson, McCoy, Cam.
McCoy. That is the best offensive lineman that you have right now, in my opinion. Now, everybody can say Ramczyk, but Ram was kind of bummed up last season. Okay, forget the best. He's the most consistent. He has been the most consistent lineman that the New Orleans Saints had. You can trust in Eric McCoy. Either he's playing center guard, whatever, but that is the guy that anchors that line, right? So McCoy, yes. Cam is going to be difficult. If Cam has a double-digit sack season this season, do you say not one more season for Cam?
Right.
But if you keep on seeing Marcus Davenport injured and not out there and not accessible and not available, that's what the coaches say. We need a player available, right? Yeah, you may want to say, can we do one more year with you, Cam? Or something to that nature, you know? But Eric McCoy, I think that's the guy that they really have to lock up. If anybody else other than CJ, Eric McCoy is the guy.
Brendan?
Well, I'll ask you this while we're on the topic of players and contracts and whatnot. John mentioned it a little bit, having concerns over a third running back. So let's talk about this. Alvin Kamara, his court date gets pushed back for 60 days, right? So as of right now, it looks like Kamara is not going to miss time, at least in the beginning portion of the season. I don't want to speculate on whether he's going to miss time later in the season. But out of the Saints running backs, because obviously Mark Ingram's getting older. Ingram doesn't have the same juice that he had in his previous stint with the New Orleans Saints. So out of the running backs in the room, is there any guy that you could see the Saints maybe stash away on the practice squad or stash away as a special teamer that's going to end up becoming maybe Ingram's replacement down the road?
Tony Jones is going to possibly make the squad. Zigbo has a good chance of being there as well. And I'm not sure about Dwayne Washington, but he had some early runs. I think he was averaging between 7 to 8 yards per carry the first couple of days of the practice. I don't know if Malcolm Brown is that guy any longer, you know, but he brings a veteran presence that you could be able to count on, right? I don't know what the situation, this whole Alvin Kamara situation has really threw everybody in for a loop. And I'm not, and Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not too sure if the Saints are still not looking for a possible veteran to be able to bring in either via trade or to be able to look at who's going to start being let go during these camps. You know, Abram may be the guy that you stash away, Brendan, but I don't know if there's anybody that wows you to say, let's kind of hide them at this time. I want to see the guy play. Can we see Smith play? I want to see what he can do. I know he was great at Baylor, but what can he do in the National Football League?
Yeah, and that's just it. And I remember, Kyle and I couldn't, we publicly stated this. We couldn't understand why Zigbo didn't make the team 2 or 3 years ago when he had his first shot, with the Saints. But I can't see the Saints stashing any of these guys because they're not going to be able to afford to stash any of them. Like you said, Ingram, you have a known commodity, and I still think he has some gas left in the tank. But if Kamara is facing a 6-game suspension this year, and there's still no guarantee of that happening, but that's another story for another time. I don't know if Ingram, I agree with you guys. I don't know if Ingram has enough left to carry the full load for a full 6 games. So if a Zigbo or Abram Smith or Tony Jones or any of these other guys, they're going to have their full opportunities in training camp and especially early in preseason games. There's no reason to give Alvin Kamara a bunch of reps. You know what you have in AK-41. You need these other guys to really step up during games as Kyle said. And I agree with you, Kyle. I expect that the Saints are going to be watching waiver wires and possible trade possibilities very, very closely in the next few weeks, because I don't see how you can be comfortable with what you have in that running back room if you believe that Alvin Kamara is indeed going to be facing a suspension. Now, maybe Abram Smith, Divino Zigbo, even Tony Jones, maybe they could be the next Kyrie Robinson or even Pierre Thomas. We don't know that until it happens. But since it hasn't happened yet, then I agree with you. These guys, until they prove it on the field, you can't feel comfortable with what you have behind Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram right now. So there's no stash in any of these guys. If they show potential, they got to be on that active roster.
Yeah, Brendan, let me ask you a question, because you are our fantasy guru. If you guys don't know, you need to follow Brendan Boylan at BT Boylan on Twitter, because he does a great job breaking down the fantasy every week for us, right? From a fantasy perspective, a lot of fantasy guys look at who's going to be there, who should I draft, and everything else. If you're looking at this Saints squad, Brendan, who do you draft other than Alvin Kamara at running back? Is it Mark Ingram? Is it Tony Jones Jr.? Are those guys you just overlook?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. The Saints as a whole this year, much better fantasy discussion than they were last year, because it was getting difficult to put articles out, because you're like, outside Alvin Kamara, there really is nobody to consistently start. You're just trying to throw darts and hope something sticks. But I think for bigger leagues, deeper leagues, like for example, there's been years I've played in leagues that just have a gazillion running backs, 2 quarterbacks and a gazillion running backs, just for fun. If you're playing in a really deep league, I would consider Mark Ingram as like an emergency flex week to week. Now, if Kamara gets suspended, which, like I said earlier, and like Bob said, that's a discussion for a completely different show. But as of right now, it doesn't look like Kamara is going to be suspended, at least for the first half of the season. But if he were to be suspended, you could look towards a Mark Ingram to fill the running back or flex role. With the topic of flex role, Taysom Hill is going to be really interesting, because what's he going to be listed as? Is he going to be a tight end? Is he going to be a quarterback? Is he going to be a running back?
Okay.
Well, what is ESPN going to list him at? And at that point, that gives you a couple different options. But outside of Alvin Kamara at the running back spot, I don't really trust anybody week to week.
Right.
Now, if you want to go to the receivers, that's a different topic, because you have lots and lots.
Let's stay with the running backs, and that was the whole issue right now, Bob and Brendan. The running back situation, you have to either say I trust certain guys and I don't trust these guys, right? I see that Jameis has a lot of trust in Tony Jones Jr. He was there with him last season during off-season workouts, as well as this season. You see him running a lot smoother, a lot better. I know early on in those preseason games, he had a fumble or something to that nature, right? But I wouldn't be too down on Tony Jones Jr. right now. That may be the guy over Mark Ingram that could possibly get some more yardage for the New Orleans Saints. And I hate to be devil's advocate, but does Mark Ingram really make the squad this season? I'm not. Please don't throw darts at me, guys. And I know on Twitter y'all like to do that, but I'm just saying, let's play devil's advocate here. Do you have enough in Mark Ingram? I think you do, but what's going to happen during preseason is going to really set the tone for what's going to happen at the beginning of the season. I think he stays with the team because he is a vet. He knows the offense. He knows the blocking assignments, and that's big in Pete Carmichael's offense, right? So I think you have to like that Mark Ingram does stay with the team. I'm just saying, if somebody does emerge, how do you keep other people from taking that spot? Okay, guys, look, I apologize. I have to get my son, but I follow these guys. They're doing a great job. I'm sad that I'm not on with you guys every week, but I appreciate Brendan and Bob, you guys are doing a fantastic job, and throughout the season, you know, I will pop in, say hello.
No, you better believe it. And boss, I ain't doing no job this week. This is the only work I've done all week, so I appreciate the time off, my friend.
Oh, don't let Lauren hear that. So. All right, guys. Y'all take care.
All right,
Love you.
Kyle.
Take care, man.
Kyle T. Mosley, the boss, the GM of the Saints News Network. And lots to unpack this week. I think Kyle did bring up a good point, though. Not that Ingram's not going to make the team.
Right.
But if, knock on wood, we do this, we do that a lot on this show. If Ingram were to pick up a knock during the season, is there somewhere behind him that you trust enough, especially if Kamara is injured, to carry the load? And I think we kind of answered that question in itself, you guys in more of a analyst chair, myself in a fantasy chair. No, there's really not anybody behind Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram that you could trust. And the Ingram situation is on, or rather the Kamara situation is ongoing. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the long run. And I think the third running back spot's one that a lot of people are writing off during camp, and maybe that's not where the eyes are right now. But as we get to preseason games, it's going to be really interesting because Dwayne Washington's made the team year after year because of his special teams contributions. But can Smith take that spot? Can Tony Jones? And Tony Jones, I don't think got enough credit last year. Really good preseason. 50 yards rushing in week 1 against Green Bay, picks up an injury, and then never gets his chance to come back and play in that similar role because the Saints make the move for Mark Ingram. So where is Tony Jones in this entire equation, right? There's a lot of questions right there at running back 3. That's definitely a spot I'm keeping my eyes on as we're like 12 or 13 days away from preseason game number 1. Bob, a lot of great information from both guys. Right there. Wanting to stick with some guys that have stood out. Obviously, you're on vacation. You're not at training camp. You're seeing some stuff on Twitter just like everybody else. Who has been a guy that's really stood out to you in the clips that you've seen and some of the reporting that we've heard? And what's a name that you're a little concerned you're not hearing a whole lot right now?
Well, and that second question that you asked is actually one that I was hoping to slip into either John or Kyle, if not both, is what early camp disappointments they've seen. And listen, folks, again, this is like Brendan just said, this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as camp. There's still a whole lot more practicing, and not to mention preseason games and live scrimmages with the Chargers. They put a lot of stock into those live scrimmages too, folks. From the clips I've seen, I tune in, I sneak peeks when I can, live peeks into training camp and whatnot when I'm at the beach. I really like the way Carl Granderson is distinguishing himself so far, and I've been a Granderson fan since he was a rookie. I echo what Kyle said. I got to believe that Eric McCoy has had a strong start to camp. Not that his job was in jeopardy at all, but he's really solidifying that interior offensive line. Chris Olave, we've already mentioned. Paulson Adebo is everybody's number 1 star at camp so far, and rightfully so. I like the way I love what I've seen out of Olave. I don't think Peyton Turner has gotten enough credit for what he's done in camp so far. He's really turned some heads, and I know the headlines he has made are because of his battles with Trevor Penning. But those feel like two titans going at it. But Peyton Turner has really made a lot of noise, in drills, 7-on-7s and full squad drills up front. And I like the way Turner is playing as well. As far as disappointments, what I've seen is the outside of Landon Young, who I agree with John, and I like Landon Young anyway, but I think Landon has had an impressive start to camp. But outside of Landon Young, the backup or projected backup offensive line is really concerning me. I expected a couple of those guys to maybe take a step forward, whether it was a Forrest Lamp or an Ethan Greenidge or one of those guys. Even Calvin Throckmorton has been somewhat quiet. And I know during games, if your linemen are quiet, That's usually a good sign. That usually means that your quarterback isn't getting beat up. That usually means that your offensive line isn't getting flagged for holding penalties. But you'd like your linemen, either as a group or individually, to make a little bit of noise during preseason. And I'm not seeing a whole lot out of the names that we usually expect to hear. Your first-round pick, Ramczyk, Mccoy, et cetera. And I'm hearing good things out of Cesar Ruiz, too. I haven't seen anything myself, but I'm hearing some good things out of Cesar Ruiz. And I'm liking what I see, and this is an underrated aspect, folks, liking what I see between Jameis Winston and his wide receiver chemistry so far, especially with those top line guys, your Jarvis Landrys, Olave, Michael Thomas. They're looking pretty sharp. After some early practice rocky moments, they've really evened themselves out. And from what I've seen from live feeds, clips, and things that I've read and heard, it looks like those guys are already humming, and that's a great sign for this passing game.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Jarvis Landry, because I think that there's been a lot of media attention towards Chris Olave, rightfully so. There's been a lot of attention towards Michael Thomas, rightfully so. And Jarvis Landry is a guy that, in a way, maybe to even the national media, outside of the Instagram photo of after practice the other day that got posted, Landry's kind of fell underneath these names in media attention. Do you have any concerns about Jarvis Landry, or is it good that we're not hearing anything relatively great or poor for the former Pro Bowl receiver?
I think it's a good thing. Let me rephrase. I don't think it's a surprising thing. Jarvis Landry has sort of slipped under the radar most of his career. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler. And that shocks the layman, the average fan, because 5 Pro Bowls is a lot. And I think you've been in the league 8 years. 5 out of 8 years, to the Pro Bowl. I realize it's a popularity contest, but that's a lot for anybody. But a lot of people do not think of Jarvis Landry when you're asked, oh, who are the league's top 5 receivers? Who are the league's top 10, even top 12 receivers? Jarvis Landry is not in that conversation with pretty much anybody. But you look at his stat line, and it's comparable with just about everybody. At least, you take the elite of the elite out of the equation. And Jarvis Landry's stats and production are on par with anybody else in the league. And that's just par for the course that people aren't talking about him. But the things that I have heard from John Hendricks and the coaches that are talking about him, and you just hear, Jarvis, he's a solid guy. He's reliable. And those are the kind of things that you like to hear from your receivers. You hear him and Jarvis and Jameis Winston go back and forth, kind of jabbing each other at work ethic, and they try to beat each other. Which one is going to beat each other as first guy in the practice room? That's just the kind of guy that Jarvis Landry is. And I know that and I've seen him make some nice catches, and you expect him to run solid routes, and he has done that so far. He looks to me like a guy who has quickly picked up at least the basic nuances of Pete Carmichael's offense and what Jameis Winston likes to do, and that's why I take it as a good sign. I don't necessarily need to hear the national media, praise him or otherwise, because the things that I've seen are the things that you expect Jarvis Landry to do for your offense.
Staying on that boat, fantasy-wise, and trust me, we'll talk more about it as the year progresses. I think that might be a guy who's going to slip in a lot of drafts, because when you think New Orleans Saints, you think Alvin Kamara. You think the return of Michael Thomas. I think Jarvis Landry is going to be a guy that if you need a solid flex option week to week, you can pick him up in a mid to late round, because he's going to get forgotten about. So definitely keep that under your hat. You're welcome. But definitely do that. And trust me, like I said, we'll have more fantasy talk, because that is my cup of tea. I love some fantasy football. We'll start doing some weekly stuff on that. We have a little bit over or under a minute left. So Bob, we'll end like this. We have 12 days or 13 days until preseason game number 1. In week 2, you need to see which player start hitting their stride. Week 2 of training camp, that is.
Wow, that's it. I got to go back. I got to go back to the skill position players on offense. I want to see a running back, whether it's a Zigbo, Jones, Abram Smith. I want to see a running back start to separate himself from the pack and who he's competing with. And I want to see, we've sung the praises of Olave, Thomas, Landry, Deontay Hardy's made some plays. I need to start hearing some noise from Marquez Callaway or Traquan Smith. Again, and I will say it every single show that we do until the actual cuts. The Saints, if on a slim chance they keep 6 receivers, it will not be the 6 that everybody automatically assumes. Callaway and Traquan Smith I'm convinced, are fighting for that 5th and probably last wide receiver job. But one of them needs to start making some noise, and I'm hoping it happens in practice before the games. So yeah, I want to start seeing the middle guys, middle roster guys at these skill positions start to make some noise against this formidable Saints defense.
I'll stick with exactly what you said and say Juwan Johnson. I want to see a little bit more out of Juwan. I want to see a little bit more out of Troutman too. Maybe not more out of Troutman, maybe consistency out of Troutman, right? That's the one knock in his career, because he's had games where he's shown flashes, but we haven't seen it consistently. Can you give me 2 consecutive weeks of camp where you are the solidified number 1 tight end that you were drafted to be? And for Juwan Johnson, can you prove to be a guy who's been a successful conversion from wide receiver to tight end, a guy that you and I both like a whole lot? Juwan Johnson.
Yeah, because not to interrupt you, Brendan, I think this signing of Chris Herndon could be a sneaky good under the radar signing. Chris Herndon has the athleticism to really push one of these guys for potential reps and possibly even a spot on the active roster.
We'll have to see what happens in that category. Before we go, Bob, it's the 2nd straight week that I've got roasted for my lack of tan. So Bob, give me some tips, man. And like I said to you last week, I don't know if it's this LED light. I'll be happy to turn it off. But I'm just not Bob Rose. And Bob, living in the, nowhere near a beach, by the way, is that tan every time I see him, whether it's in person or whether it's through a screen. Bob's just a naturally tan guy. So
well,
I
folks,
appreciate it, but
first of all, I am Italian, so it doesn't take much sun to get me to darken up. Secondly, Brendan's right. I don't live anywhere near a beach. But I'm a beach bum at heart. Years and years and years of pro-am beach volleyball tour. Maybe I just have that natural pigment in me because I would just fry myself all summer. For about 12 years in a row. Thirdly, even though I don't live by a beach, I do live up the hill from a river, and the articles that I normally work on, so regularly when I'm not being lazy on vacation. I do so outside on my deck, and my deck gets direct sunlight from 8 a.m. until almost noon. That's the life of this sports writer. Is just sitting out on the porch in the sun. Research all around me, and everything like that. So I get the sun beating down on me without having to go to a tanning bed or anything goofy like that. I'm a kid of the '80s. I don't need to microwave myself. I'll just go outside and just sit in the sun.
Oh man, making the city bum in me sound awful, but that's okay. Well, guys, we really appreciate all the support that we've gotten through the first 3 episodes. We're gonna have more great guests for you. We're gonna have more camp breakdowns. We're gonna have more fantasy football. We're gonna have a whole lot to bring you. And like I said earlier, if you don't already, go ahead and give us a follow on Twitter. Real easy. It's at Bayou Blitz Pod, POD. And participate in our weekly polls so you can hear and get your voice heard on what we, want to talk about week in and week out. Because at the end of the day, this show, as Bob says, is for you guys. And we want to be able to provide that insight to you. Bob, where can the people follow you after you get back from being a beach bum? Because I know not a whole lot of content's coming out this week.
No, very, very little, if any, content. And folks, again, thank you. Thank you for following Brendan Boylan and our guys, John Hendricks and Kyle Mosley at the Saints News Network and SI.com. That's where you can follow me. And I appreciate everybody's patience while I be a lazy bum this week. But you can follow me over on Twitter at BobbyR2613. On Facebook, of course, Bob Rose, or our Bayou Blitz Facebook page. And Brendan already directed you on how to find the Bayou Blitz Facebook group. And I promise you that if and when I decide to come back from the beach this Sunday, I'll get right back to work. But I'd also love to wish a happy first wedding anniversary to my beautiful wife, Lauren. That's why we're down here this week. This was 1 year removed from the scene of the crime when we got married on the beach right there behind me just last year. So our anniversary was on Monday. So happy first anniversary, Lauren. I love you, but we got the kids here. So like I said, I want to thank everybody for your patience and letting me be a little bit lazy this week. I love you for it.
For myself, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram below at BT Boylan. No offense to you guys, but I try to keep my Facebook as private as possible. So definitely give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram. I respond to all DMs. Shoot, I think I just told you guys the story. I was at the beach myself a couple weeks ago, people DMing me about fantasy football, and family and friends can wait. Fantasy football is important. Saints news is important. And I'd also like to give a happy birthday. I won't say the age because she'd kill me, but happy birthday to my Nana up in New Jersey. I hope you had a long, successful day at Atlantic City. Hopefully it went better for you than it did me last time I was up there. But nonetheless, we will be back next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, talk more Saints football. We appreciate every single one of you. And until then, Bob, continue to get tan. I'll continue to be the city boy, and we'll see you guys next week. And remember, find your peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you next time here on the Bayou Blitz podcast.